smartest guys around are about to break it down like they won the game a million times.
Well, actually, they didn't really win the game at all.
Survivor know it all. Survivor know it all. Stephen without it down. Got the game on they know it all.
Yeah, that's right. The Survivor Know-It-Alls got this game all figured out. Rob Cesternino back with Stephen Fishbach. Stephen, would you rather podcast about a wild, crazy season or a quiet season? What would you rather?
The crazy seasons, there's so much pressure to get it right, figure it out. Quiet season, if we're more interesting than the episode, that could be
a win.
Yeah, it's a win.
That's a win.
Yeah.
Stephen Fishbach, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. It's great to be chatting with you. What are you up to?
Oh, I'm just, excited to be back here with you. A highlight of the week for me and an interesting vote here tonight as we came up onto this 3-3-3 scenario. Ultimately, it's Kane who goes home. Then the big Kane machine never really got going in this season.
Yeah, I thought it was very funny. Like the Carol was like, "Why? What's so threatening? What's so threatening about Kane?"
Mm-hmm.
Is that sort of that's like Carolyn, with Mario from the Mario video game?
You have not done a lot of impressions over 11 years of podcasting.
I'm very resistant. I'm with the king. You don't when you don't play poker against Daniel Negreanu.
Mm-hmm.
You don't play chess.
Some do. A lot of people do.
Well, I guess there are. That's right. I mean, but not.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm picking up what you're putting down, but I appreciated it. Anyway, so we will talk with Kane tomorrow and find out what he has to say about all of this. Kane went home with Jamie's idol, which we were robbed. We should have got to see.
That was the moment of the season and I thought you had a great prediction, like that Jamie's whole edit was leading. Not that we
now what does she have?
Jamie's story was leading to a big blow up with this idol where she plays it. It's a dramatic moment for her, and then egg on the face.
Yeah,
no, the egg is gone. Her face is still there, but the egg is gone.
Steven, I'm surprised they even included it in the show. They could have just never shown us Matthew finding an idol, Jamie getting a fake idol, Jamie giving the fake idol to Kane. They could have cut this all out.
Zero. I mean, it was fun. It was fun along the way. We had some fun. We had some special fun.
It was a tease.
Losing the fake idol, honestly. I mean, I liked Kane a lot as a player, but losing the fake idol was also
in production. They did have some fun with it in terms of can you believe it? I still have my idol. So they had some fun editing moments for sure. Jam at Travel Counts with the subtitles. So I do like all that. I think they're having a lot of fun with it, and so. You like to see that, but I was disappointed. We were robbed. But anyway, we will have an exit interview coming up with Kane on Thursday. And then I have a chance on Thursday to get to speak with somebody I haven't done the recap with before. Janet Carbon from Survivor 39 is going to join me. And she messaged me recently, how come I've never been on your podcast? I was like, hey, well, let's do it, Janet. Let's go.
Yeah. She's, I've been so
tempt me with a good time.
And amazed. She's been a huge part. She goes on all I would not have thought Janet would be the one going on, all the online games and being the stuff that because that I do, the nerdy things that the people I just wouldn't have pegged Janet for that. So it's been fun to see that she really is such a big part of the really involved with the post show community.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to talk to her tomorrow. And then on Monday, I'll be back with another feedback show as Hannah Shapiro is going to join me for her annual visit to the Survivor Feedback Show. So it should be a fun week to break this all down. All right, Stephen, let's talk about a couple of big things at this hour. We had our first live tribal council of the season. Did anything change?
I mean, that's the only a lot of people whispering to each other, the plan's the same. Is the plan the same? The plan's the same. It didn't feel like any plans were actually changing.
Yeah, it's so hard to tell in terms of like we saw where, and I don't know who was the first person to set it off. I saw, it was Kane. Was Kane talking to Carolyn about like how certain are you about the vote? And ultimately, I mean, Carolyn's voting for Kane in that spot.
The only interesting part, so let's like run through who votes for who, right? So
Yes.
Kane votes for Danny. He's the only one. And this is
Yes.
part of the, supposed RHAP split vote between Danny and Heidi, where
I don't think it was supposed for them. Yeah, it was very real for them.
No, right. But I mean, RHAP thought they were splitting the vote. And in fact, they did split the vote because Lauren, Jamie, and then Lauren's extra vote for Heidi. And then it was supposed to be Kane, Jam and Carson. I don't know if Carolyn was in there.
Yeah, it might have been a men voting for Dan. It might have been men on Danny and women on Heidi.
Well, they had 4 votes. They had 4 votes. I remember that on Danny because they had more votes on Danny. So I think maybe it was with Carson. With Carolyn. So all of the Tikas end up voting for Kane as well. So all the Tikas and all the Sokas vote for Kane, except for a very strange vote. Franny puts 1 vote on Jamie, which makes no sense because that's not a split vote. That's that is no impact. Like that's not like protecting against an idol or protecting against a shot in the dark.
Yeah,
because they know like 1 vote is fewer than the 3 votes that they or 4 votes that they know. They have.
All right, let's go to our friend, an honorary know-it-all, Christian Hubicki in the chat. Maybe a hinky vote emerged from the live trouble.
Well, that's where I was going.
The Franny vote for Jamie comes to mind. What do you think of that? Could that have been some intentional chicanery from Franny?
I think it's not impossible that Franny was very big on flushing Jamie's idol. She kept on being like, I think they're voting for you, when we saw in the pre-tribal council deliberations. So it's possible she put a vote on on Jamie, like just to kind of make her nervous for next time where like she gets a vote like, next time I better play my idol.
You think so? I'm trying to think.
Or it was just like a miss,
Franny is immune, so she could play a little loosey goosey here.
Right.
I don't know if I don't have enough information yet at this point to come up with any other theories. It's also possible that these things do get confusing during the live tribal councils. Right. Yeah. And so maybe that somebody said something and they weren't being serious and she was under the impression that the plan has changed. I think that that's a possibility. Hinky vote's a possibility. Maybe that there was some other scenario that we're not thinking of that could have been like, okay, well, what if this idol gets played and this person does a shot in the dark? Could we put a vote on this person? So I'm sure we will continue to talk that through as the week goes along. Let me ask you, in terms of, I think of this as being one of your strengths of figuring out the vote split.
Okay.
Yes. In addition to being, professionally handsome.
Right. That's sort of, yeah.
For the RHAP group.
Yeah.
Is this how you would ideally structure a vote split where
Lauren
and Heidi basically, and Lauren's extra vote on, Lauren and Jamie have their votes on Heidi, and then Kane and the whole other tribe on the person you actually want to go home.
Right. You do want to put the most reliable votes on the person you most want to go home. I think that's a very good point. Like the votes you're not so sure of, you want to put on the overflow because that's a great point. Like that was not that well structured. But on the other hand, if Tika was voting with Soka, as they were, you're screwed anyway. So it sort of just doesn't matter. But to optimize, and you should be trying to optimize in small ways at every point because that's how you get an edge. You should be putting all their votes they should be putting their 4 votes on the person they want to go home. And then, it's also not impossible that, maybe like Tika claimed they wanted to vote for Danny, obviously, it was important to Carolyn to get Danny out. So like maybe that was like Carolyn, you get, maybe there was like some sense of like, let's just put, because they were less reliable, they were like, it's more straightforward if they just vote for the person who they want to go home. But so I don't think that's an impossible consideration. Like Carolyn instead said, I'm voting for Danny. Okay, we'll go vote for Danny, and you guys vote for her for him too. But the optimal would be to put the vote you're most solid with on the person you want to go home.
Stephen, how about for Tika? Is this the right call for them to make? Obviously, so much has been made about in this post-merge game, how they're in the middle, they're the swings. They could go with either Ratu or Soka last week that they knew about that Danny was going to play the idol, and ultimately were happy to pretend to vote with Ratu, at least from Carson and Jam Jam's perspective. In this spot, they could have gone either way. They could have said, let's get Danny out, let's get Kane out. And ultimately, they go with Kane. We saw Jam and Carolyn discussing this in the episode. Did you like the decision to side with Soka and take Kane out instead of taking Danny out?
Well, what's interesting is that, I think from our perspective, maybe Danny seems like a bigger threat. He's like going to play harder, but he's also the one in the episode who's like, why on earth would we turn on the Tika people, right? Like Franny goes to Danny and says, why would we turn on suggest they turn on the Tika? She says, these Tika 3, they're playing the middle. Like, let's take them out.
Franny's making a lot of sense. I gotta be honest.
Yeah. Well, although I do wonder, like, let's take a step back. Like, I think we all, because of just the way the story is being told, and I'm not talking about edit. I promise I will not talk about edit. It's not a part of this conversation. We all have a sense that the Tika 3 might be in the final 3, and that maybe one of them is the winner, right? That's convention. That's sort of where we're all at in this chatter. If
I think that's a reasonable assumption based off of what we've seen so far. They are the 3 people who have gotten the most. The caveat being, in the new era of Survivor,
right?
That has not necessarily been the most predictive metric.
No, in fact, it's almost like reliably wrong to go for the person.
Marianne got a lot in 42.
Yeah, but not a very traditional winner's edit by any means. But so, we know that Franny is right here, but like, what if Franny had gotten her way and they had voted off Tika, and then Ratu steamrolls somehow, because they do have all this hardware, some of it fake, and then Ratu wins. Like, we're seeing a very different story. We're seeing the story where, Franny made a catastrophic choice, not where Danny made a catastrophic choice. So anyway, I'm just saying, like, the story we're seeing is, determined by, is in some way by the results. But back to your initial question. Was this the right call for Tika? I do think the fact that Danny really wants to stick with Tika is a reason to play with Danny. I mean, to stick with him. And Jam obviously is really fixated on this idea of like, I'm eliminating everyone who wrote me like my name down. Like he said it a couple times in the episode. Clearly that's his Godfather moment. That's his like final tribal speech, right? Like, everyone who wrote my name down, they went home, bam, 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 jam.
Yeah. But hold on a second. Also, like, I feel like that part of this that's being left out, like, didn't Heidi make Lauren write down Jam's name at a tribal council? Like, I feel like that Jam is leaving out that part of the story.
Yeah, I don't think that has been that's been forgiven. I think that might. I mean, Heidi being next would be very much in line with where this.
Well, does he get mad at Lauren? Lauren's the one that actually had to write it.
Yeah, it wasn't Lauren's fault. Yeah, she against her will. Yeah, I mean, Lauren was one who was really pushing for eliminating Matt in that spot. But I don't know, what's your take? Did Tika make the right call? I think
that they did, but only because Lauren had the extra vote. I think had Lauren like burned her extra vote at the tribal council where Matt ultimately went home, if she had played her second vote to take Matt out, I do wonder if Tika would have made a different decision, because basically that extra vote is almost like another number for them. So yes, they only have 3, but they actually have 4 votes as opposed to, and then, Kane, again, I'm kind of with Carolyn on like Kane. Why is he a threat? What is he doing?
Yeah.
he couldn't even like go look for a key because he ate a peanut butter sandwich. I don't think that he was like necessarily like, he doesn't have a lot of relationships, doesn't seem to have any advantages. And I don't really feel like that he had a lot going on as opposed to Danny, who is like really in the middle of everything. But Lauren had that extra vote. And so I do wonder if now, okay, they took out a number from Ratu, and now will they make the move to switch back this upcoming?
I think that's the next move for sure. I think that's got to be. I think they're going to do the ping and the pong. But here's the counter question, Rob. Was Franny right or was Danny right? So I mean, we see the Tika 3 as being, totally in the middle. Carson's in the middle of the middle. He's like got the best spot. But on the other hand, the game is 3-3-3. And like you said, Lauren has that extra vote. They also all think Jamie has an extra has an idol, which is, like fair for them to think. They're wrong, but like there's no reason that they should know they're wrong. If you are the one, if you're there, Rob Cesternino, Danny and Franny having a chat, Danny's making his case, like, let's stick with Tika. These guys have been tight with us. Let's take out Ratu. They got a lot of firepower. Franny's like, no, Tika's playing the middle. They're playing both sides. Where are you voting?
So now that's hard to say because me, Rob Cesternino, I have more complete information. I know they're playing the middle. Also, that Franny also has insight that Danny doesn't have, where Franny knows that people like Carson and Jam were in on these conversations of, let's vote out Danny that she was having. And now she can't say to Danny, like, well, Carson and Jam were talking to me just like 2 days ago about voting you out. So they're definitely playing the middle, where they may have been painting a picture to Danny of like, no, we're 100% with you, Danny. And so that Franny, I think, can see it a little bit more clearly. I think the question is ultimately in Survivor, are you better off with the devil versus the devil you don't? Like, if this person is like, okay, I know where these people stand and they are against me, am I better off like potentially trying to work with them against people that I don't know where their allegiances lie?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I'm just raising the thing that it's not. I mean, I think we all agree that Franny is right. But I'm just trying to say it's not as cut and dry as, maybe my gut reaction was watching the episode, because, but I think I would still, and I think this is what you're suggesting, like I would stake Franny's point there, where someone who is constantly maneuvering in the way that the Tika 3 we see are, I would want them out of the game. I want the slippery ones out. I want to be the slippery one. You don't want the, whereas we've seen the Ratus, and again, like we're, not saying a full story here, but we've seen that they're a little bit more, down the line, like, hey, we're the Ratu 4, now the Ratu 3. And like, this is what we're doing. Like, we're going to go last episode. They went and told everyone what they were doing. So they're not the ones like, outmaneuvering and so I would think, I would have stuck with Franny on that one. I absolutely would have voted out Tika, obviously probably Carson, right? Like that's, now with the complete information we have,
hasn't he been through enough, Stephen? Okay, but I think that in a very intriguing way going into next week, we'll get to the final 8. Now, is Tika's cover blown yet at this point? Where So now after this tribal council, they come back. Lauren and Jamie are like, what happened? Jam and Carolyn and Carson. I thought you were with us. What happened? And then it's like, oh, that they were telling us that they were going to split the vote. And so that, is it just like, okay, that the next 2 votes are going to be Lauren and Jamie pending they win individual immunity?
That's a possibility. It does seem like, for what it's worth, Tika has been pretty forthright with Soka, right? Like from Ratu's perspective, Tika has bounced back and forth because Ratu thought that Tika was with them on the last vote, trying when Brandon went home. But from Soka's perspective, Tika's been with them on both votes. They've known about both votes. So, Ratu can blow up at them, but they've got a pretty safe home with Soka. And
really what they should do is not blow up too hard, because really the optimal move is going to be for them to say, look, all right, okay, you got us on that one. But how about Danny? What about Danny now? Like,
isn't the optimal move to
Danny the biggest papaya that's on the board right now?
if you're in RHAP and like Tika's just like totally snowed you, like aren't you going to want a Tika out?
I think that might be your first instinct, and that move I think is probably not there for the taking because you're going to need Soka to turn on them.
But Franny's up for it.
Franny might have look, that for Franny and for Heidi and for Danny, that might be a more appetizing move than going after Danny for sure. But I do feel like that from what we've seen, especially from Carson and Jam, that I think that they really relish being in the middle. And I do feel like that they are going to look at, especially where Carolyn, she wants Danny out next. And I think that they probably will double back to Lauren and Jamie. But the only question is, will Lauren and Jamie expose them potentially to Soka? And then how does that play?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's likely that Danny or Heidi goes home next. Like that seems to me the likeliest possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Although I guess Franny too. I don't know.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Danny because I'm starting to feel like, is Danny getting the villain edit a little bit here? Because boy, Danny had had such a hate what on in this episode for the whole rice negotiation.
I mean, I'm sure. What?
Like and again,
that's not villainous.
I don't know if like he was just like he wouldn't let it go. Like, oh my god.
Which is funny because like if you are competing for immunity, you sort of want fewer people to be competing against you.
This should be Danny in the confessionals. Like, hey, this game is only 26 days. You could suck it up and not eat. Like, I would never sit out of the challenge, but I hope everybody else does.
Right.
Like, what is he making like this into like a principle of like, I better not see anybody sitting out of this challenge unless he feels like, hey, I know I can go without rice for all this time. I don't need to refuel my competitors.
Yeah, I mean, I do think people get very proud of their season, right? You want it to be a good season, and that means whatever, good is to you. And so I'm not that shocked that someone like Danny is, this is what good means to me. Like, I think it would be cool if we like all played hard. We didn't like sit out. We didn't negotiate. Like we played like classic hardcore, gallbladders to the wall. Is that the expression? It's galls to the wall, right?
Yeah.
Galls to the wall survivor. And didn't like do any kind of like weak negotiation stuff. Like that was a fun character moment. I mean, I'm glad they kind of made a big deal out of it because it was sort of like a fun, conflict of values.
Yeah, they really did make a whole meal out of it. And then, his whole thing about like, oh yeah, like I won't vote anybody out. Scout's honor. Like,
very fun.
Yeah. Stephen, all right, this is the fourth time we've seen the rice negotiation here in the new era. Is it picking up steam? Not to make it a rice pun, but is it doing anything for you as a viewer?
Yeah, I mean, this was fun because there was that tension of will it actually happen, right? And because there was like, I think most seasons it just is like we're waiting to see who the four are, whereas this time there really felt like, well, maybe they won't happen. And that was interesting. And because Carson was so desperate for it. And because, the other players were really, and because it has been, a much more kind of chaotic season than last season. Speaking of which, like, we got to get to talk about like Jeff just like negging season 43 at Tribal Council. Like, aren't you glad you're on a good
seasons where players are making moves and not just sitting there?
Yeah. Live tribals. Isn't it fun? I miss it. No, but this was more fun. I mean, I think maybe it was Dalton was tweeting about how he wished they would go back to the reward challenge, the immunity where Jeff would come out with, a plate of cookies, which of course you remember very well from Survivor the Amazon Classic moment. But when he would come out and like individually tempt you, I mean, that was always fun. And I don't think like who's going to sit out for rice is quite as fun as that.
No, it's not. It's like, again, sitting out for rice, it's fine. But,
right.
This is the fourth season in a row. Like, I don't like that it's part of the show.
Right.
And then after it was over, it was like afterwards that everybody's like, oh my God, I feel so much like now I feel like I can actually play the game. And now the game is, and Jeff was even like, wow, like You can feel how electric this is. Like, if only you had a way to be able to make your show more exciting. If there was only one simple trick to be able to get more exciting results out of your players on Survivor.
Yeah.
Just give them the rice. Who
give
cares?
them the rice to begin with. Right. No one cares about them. Like, they're suffering. They're outside. It's cold. It's rainy. They're not eating that much. Give them enough so that they can if that is truly what's holding back people is like a half a bag of rice, like give them the rice.
This is the one thing I don't know. Like, there's so much stuff. Like, I don't know who they're focus grouping on any of this stuff, but they feel like, oh no, they have to have nothing. They have to have absolutely nothing. And that's what I wanted. That's what I want to see on Wednesday night. Who cares?
Right.
Just let them eat. We want to see them running around.
Yeah. We want to see them running around. I mean, give them more. Like, truly, like they're hungry. They're hungry anyway. Like, if they're having like 4 spoonfuls of rice instead of 2, they're hungry.
So, and look, we got it with the rice negotiation. It's fine. We had a little bit of downtime in this episode also. Mike Bloom had commented on how the last couple episodes were basically like from the time they did Mergatory, it was I think it might have been day 13 that Josh went out. It was day 14. Everything happened with Matt. And then the last episode was day 15. And then
that's crazy.
In this episode, we had a little bit of like a point where the survivors could catch their breath a little bit.
Yeah, it was very fun. I mean, I think this is what makes the show so great, right? Is when you see these conversations, when you see people bonding, kind of like, them laughing about the way Carolyn said S as ass was very funny. And then Carolyn sharing her story of, recovering from addiction and having a great family and not caring what people, think about her was wonderful.
Yeah. So, just like a little bit of downtime from like this breakneck pace that we've had here over these last couple of episodes before we got to. It was such an unusual like storm. Like, the survivors normally have like pretty good weather in Fiji, and then we had like this just like absolute downpour during the challenge, and it like very quickly subsided by the time the challenge was over.
It was like crazy. It looked like, I mean, that brought me back. When I see a downpour like that, I'm like, oh my God.
Sure.
I feel those sentiments. I mean, does it? Amazon rained a lot. Yeah.
In the Amazon, it rained a lot at the end of the game. Like we got into like the rainy season, and then it rained. Like we had like a very long stretch of dry. And then like the last, like they really like timed it. Like once we hit like the day 30s, it was like torrential rain almost every day.
Did you all have a machete on that season?
Yes.
That's so wild.
Yeah. Oh, well, that was that was like Mark Burnett's vision of that we were going to be like cutting through the jungle with like all the vines and everything.
And you were, right? You were really like cutting through the jungle.
We didn't cut like into the jungle.
That's what it looked like. It looked like
it, but I guess it was the only season where we all got a machete. Where normally there's only one machete.
Yeah, that's such a cool idea, for Brent. And you could have like machete fights.
We never had a machete fight. I do have my machete. I think is in my mom's garage.
Oh, how fun! How great!
Yeah, I gotta dig it out. I don't know how it's held up in the garage for the last 20 years.
But so getting back to the episode, this is what happened. Was another interesting thing that happened in this episode was that the knowledge is power, while not in the game, and Pirate Tom just tweeted at me, knowledge is power is good, bro. And it made, like it was really fun. Like the effect of the knowledge is power causing that kind of paranoia where everyone's got to like switch items around. Did you like that?
Well, I didn't like the end result that ultimately, like, first of all, like, I don't even understand the rules of the knowledge is power because like that we saw basically that, we saw that Lauren gave her extra vote to Jamie, and then Jamie gave her idol to Kane. Now, do you have to specifically nail the idol or advantage that you have? Like if somebody, let's say Franny stood up and had knowledge is power and said, Jamie, do you have an advantage? Or Jamie, do you have an idol? She'll say, no, I have an advantage.
Yeah, I think you have to say idol or advantage, right? You have to like ask for which one it is. Is that not right?
I am not sure of the actual the intricacies of the rules. I mean, that does sound familiar, but I don't know, like in terms of how they would enforce that.
Oh, no. So here it is. Here's how it works. You are allowed to ask one player either of the following two questions. Do you have an advantage or do you have an idol?
Yeah, that would be very ticky-tack of like, do you have an idol? Like, no, I have an advantage. Sorry,
what happens to
go
Jamie
fish.
if she says yes? Like, is she ejected from the because she's wrong? Because she thought, or I guess in this case, Kane, she's wrong that she had an idol. What happens then?
Because it's fake.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be the great scenario to get to see where Kane's like, all right, you got me. Here's the idol. Here you go. I had Jamie's idol the whole time. And then does Jeff say, actually, or like, it's like
it's not an idol. It's not an idol. So that would be,
it's a fake idol an advantage.
It's breaking the rules of the game to claim you had an idol when asked by the player cannot lie.
Yeah.
The rules of the knowledge power is very clear. The player cannot lie. So if you say you have an idol and you only have a fake idol, now Socrates says knowledge is a true belief. So it's a false belief. He doesn't know. Therefore, a lie?
I don't think, if he doesn't know, I don't think that's a lie.
Okay. I mean, that's an interesting question. What makes something a lie?
It's a very interesting philosophical question. Maybe we could do a new audiobook of the philosophy of Survivor and get into all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I did think it was interesting that we were talking about knowledge is power and it is not yet deployed in the game.
Yeah. Well, that's what I liked about it, was that it was like the threat of it is creating.
Are we getting it? Are we getting knowledge is power?
I don't, not this late in the game.
I mean, so just to do our advantage check, I know that there was a lot of people shouting from the rooftops about how many, myself included, about how much the over idol and advantagification of Survivor. But are we down to just Carolyn's idol being the only thing in the game?
Yeah, I guess so.
And Heidi found an idol tonight.
Heidi idol and Carolyn's idol, right? The two. I mean, two idols is still a good. I mean, two idols.
Old school Survivor, baby.
2 idols, 8 players. Yeah.
So okay. Interesting. That they can't let this go on for too much longer, right?
Yeah, you got to get something new in there.
Okay. Let's get into some questions from our listeners. But before we do that, I got to tell you about what we're doing coming up in 2 weeks. All right. So I'm going to be in Toronto coming up in 2 weeks' time. I will unfortunately not be able to be with Stephen Fishbach, who will be live with Dr. Evie Jagoda coming up in 2 weeks' time. I will be in Toronto with the great Toronto survivors. Marianne and Omer are going to be joining us live in Toronto. Kevin Jacobs, Big Brother winner. Also, Gabby Pascuzzi, Carla, Mike Turner, and a score of other alumni from reality TV will be joining us for Survivor. But if you don't have a ticket, I'm sorry. Sorry for you. That show's sold out.
Oh.
But sorry for you. But that being said, we will be in Toronto for 2 nights, and I will also be at the Big Brother Canada finale podcast coming up on May 11th. Tickets are still available for that show if you want to be there with us. robisawebsite.com/Toronto. Stephen, expected over 40 Big Brother Canada alumni.
Wow. Did you invite them, or they're just going to show up?
We invited some and the rest are showing up. It's going to be a wild night.
Wow, that's fun.
Okay. Tickets are available at robbinswebsite.com/Toronto and should be an unforgettable time up north. And we'll have the recordings of that podcast up eventually after we get done, but it's going to be a really fun one to be back in Toronto. All right. Yes, Stephen.
We just didn't talk about the Jam versus Carolyn dynamic, where once again they have a disagreement about who to vote for, and once again Jam gets his way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think that is a premonition of anything?
No, I'm just interesting because that was like such a big contentious issue for them before, where Carolyn wanted one thing, Jam Jam wanted another, and Jam Jam wasn't listening to her. And I thought Jam Jam was going to be like, I've learned that I need to respect Carolyn's wishes a little bit more. That did not happen.
Yes. I love Carolyn as a television character, but I do feel like that we hear from Carolyn that, okay, she knows more about what's going on and she's being disrespected. But I do feel like that from what we actually see on our screen, we do see Jam Jam doing like a lot of work.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing is like, from our perspective, Carolyn is right? Like in this case, what we were talking about, like, is Danny a bigger threat than Kane? Like, yeah. Yeah. I mean, although we did agree that we would, if we would have taken out Kane. So
only because of Lauren's extra vote.
That's a reason. That's a thing that exists.
Yeah, that's the thing that exists. And I do think they can double back and take out Danny this next vote.
Yeah.
We'll see. All right.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting. And Franny, another challenge win.
Yeah. 2 out of 3 that she's eligible for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
All right. Let's see. How about a question from Mark? Of the players who voted out Kane, whose game is most likely to suffer for voting out Kane?
That's a very good question, Mark. That's a very interesting question. So I do think, I mean, it's so hard. Like, if I didn't, like, is the Tika 3 gonna like get in trouble over it?
See, I kind of thought that Kane, though, he at like only 2 votes ago seemed like he was willing to jump ship from Ratu. Like that, the merge happened. Brandon is like, I don't trust Kane. I don't want to work with him. We saw Kane talking to Carson. We saw Kane talking to Franny. I'm like, oh, well, Kane's part of the Misfits. And then all of a sudden things look good for Ratu for a second. Kane threw his lot in with Brandon. This is it. Where Ratu is going all the way. If it's not Ratu at the end of the game, we're a bunch of idiots. And then now he's gone.
Well, I wonder, like, I mean, to your point about Kane, talking to Franny, is it possible that Franny didn't want to vote for Kane? Like, she had affection for him? I mean, as we all saw, I mean, as Zach Wartenberg tweeted, he is Matt. So maybe Franny didn't want to vote Kane out. So he had a very funny tweet about it. He's really fire. He's the best. He's honestly, I think, the funniest Survivor. I mean, obviously you're here too, but he is, I think, the funniest Survivor tweeter that's out there.
Yeah. Funniest Survivor under 40.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's put out the list. Yeah,
that's right. But I do wonder too, like, I mean, if I had to pick, and Franny didn't vote for Kane, but like on that side, I would think that closes off her options more than it does anybody else's.
I mean, yeah, because Franny does seem like she's at the bottom of Soka. Like, and I feel like that we got a little bit of Franny talking about her relationship with Carolyn. I think that she might be the closest to Carolyn, but it does feel like that Kane was a number that Franny could have potentially picked up.
And what about Carson and like that bond? They're like, Lord of the Rings bond.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that for Carson, we didn't really get like who Carson's horse in the race was ultimately on this one, right?
No, we just saw him playing, just saw him like trying to bring Carolyn. And
we really heard this from Jam Jam's POV of why Kane had to be the vote. Yeah. This is fun from other Caitlin, Stephen.
Other Caitlin wants to know, is it really fair to call it a negotiation when Jeff has a set price? That's hilarious.
Yeah, and Jeff, even after it was over, Jeff was like, "Wow, what a great negotiation this was."
You agreed to the terms set before you.
Amazing negotiation.
I mean, if they had been like, "We have 3, like that's all we're giving you. Like, can we have a half a bag of rice?" Like that would have been a negotiation. But this was not that.
Yeah, I feel like they kind of negotiated with themselves.
Yeah. Pressuring each other to do something.
Yeah. All right. How about this made me upset too. Okay. Lauren says, were Jam and Carolyn climbing the same
my
rock that
gosh.
sent Matthew out of the game? What are we doing?
That was crazy. You'd think at
What
that
are we
point,
doing?
the producers would be like, "Hey guys, just don't climb the rock anymore. Like, just stay
get
off
off
that
the rock, everybody. Just new rule: nobody climb the rock."
Yeah. Or what were like the other RHAP players up to? Why couldn't they be like, "Hey, maybe stay away from that one. That one."
Well,
was
they were
not so
probably
good for
like,
us."
"Hey, like at this point in the game, like they hope more people get medically evacuated." But if you're production, could you imagine you lose Carolyn or Jam on the rock?
Oh my God! Oh my
Somebody
God.
would have to be fired.
No, that's so ridiculous.
And Jeff had said when it happened on the On Fire official Survivor podcast, like, "Oh, we would never tell the players not to climb on the rock." Why?
Yeah, I'm actually a fan of that. Like, I don't feel like enough guardrails. There's enough guardrails, but the specific rock, I mean, rocks generally, I would agree. But like once someone has been injured and medically evacuated because of an injury on a specific rock, which was already looked pretty risky, like maybe just that rock, just stay away from that one rock.
Stephen, if Carolyn, like not for anything, like I'm a pragmatist, okay?
Yeah, I've always said that
this
about
is,
you.
This show is a business. Could you imagine the ramifications of I maybe they just feel like, "Oh, hey, Carolyn falls off the rock, we'll bring her back next season. It's fine." But I mean, you people are going to be turning the show off in droves.
Yeah, that would be not great. But the Bruce versus Carolyn season would be a great classic captain's matchup.
Poor Matthew guys sitting at home screwed.
I don't make the rules.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What about Tubby Lunchbox, Steven?
All right. The great Tubby Lunchbox wants to know, does Tika become the big threat now? Do Soka and Ratu work together to target one of them?
Honestly, I don't think it happens next week. I think that they go back and they get one more Soka, and then it comes down to at the 7.
Yeah.
Okay. You have 4 non-Tikas.
Right.
3 Tikas.
Right.
That's the week that I feel like, hey, line in the sand. There's 3 of them. There's 4 of us.
Right.
This is the time that we do it.
Yeah.
And then they're gonna be like, "Yeah, but what about Soka? Come on, we gotta stop them. Come on, Ratu. What about them? We gotta, that. I think that'll be fun when if we get it down to 3, a 3, a 2, and a 2.
Yeah, that'd be very fun. That'd be very fun.
I think that would be a very, very interesting vote. So,
and at some point, hopefully,
I don't think it's at 8.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. I think Ahsoka's going next week. Which Ahsoka? I think it could be any of them. I really don't know.
I think it's Danny.
I think there's a good chance it's Danny. I think there's a good chance it's Franny. If Franny loses immunity, they got to take a shot at her. Like her boyfriend's on the jury twice, and then she's this immunity beast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess there might be some thought that maybe Danny has an idol, and I think it's going to be tough to execute a split, I guess, because can you split there at 8 if it's 5 versus 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's, you can't split that, right?
No, I mean
I guess you could put 3 at that point. It's like what,
and maybe Danny wins immunity. I mean, Danny seems like the obvious next target because Carolyn obviously really wants it. Like, he's this big player. He just played the idol for. I mean, I would say Danny, but I don't think it's impossible that Franny goes home. And even Heidi, I can see a case for.
Well, we haven't talked about Heidi, that she did find the idol, and Heidi, very smartly says, "I'm not gonna tell anybody about my advantage."
Yeah, for once.
Finally, yeah.
Okay.
All right. How about this question from Anthony?
Anthony wants to know, will anyone believe Jamie if she sees that Kane left with her idol? If she says that Kane left with her idol, and does it drastically improve her odds of making it to the end? That's very funny. Like, Jamie says, "Oh yeah, Kane had my idol because of knowledge is power." Do people believe her?
Boy, I would think so, because then she could I don't know if they know, will they know that she played Lauren's vote? So it's like, yeah, we all switched our advantages around because of knowledge is power. And so does it help Jamie or hurt Jamie that the fake idol that she possessed is now gone? Like,
it definitely helps her.
It helps her. Like, was it offering her protection, or was it making her a target?
I think it was making her a target, right? Because people were worried about the idol. Oh, I mean, although, you never want to stack votes on someone who has an idol to play. So it goes both ways, right? On the one hand, it attracts attention to you. On the other, when it comes down to it and you're actually making that decision, you probably will not put the votes on that person.
I do think it ultimately helps her in terms of winning the game, because I do think that it would be hard for the jury to respect somebody that comes up there and plays a fake idol that they think was real.
Yeah.
And then it's like a whole like kerfuffle over like, no, it's real. What are you talking about?
You don't want
like, no, it's fake.
Yeah.
Like, no, I found it. It's real. Fake,
Yeah.
fake.
Yeah.
Yeah. You faked with me? Yes, we faked. Okay. All right. Stephen, how about from Anthony? Does Franny have those potential to go on an immunity run? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be great. Like, get a real what's the most is Kelly W still the most female wins for, right? Kelly Wigglesworth?
Yeah.
Tied with someone like most
Jenna Maraska has 4 immunity wins, and I think did Kim also win 4?
I can't remember how many Kim had.
I don't know if a woman has won 5 in a season.
I do not believe so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Chrissy Hoffbeck, did she have 4 or 5?
Oh, I think she was tied for I think maybe she had 4. Yeah.
I think they all have 4.
Yeah, I think yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And Parvati may have 5 over other seasons.
No. This is not like a full career. This is one season we're talking about. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And speaking of the challenges, Carson hasn't competed in a single individual challenge. Do you think that he could be good at them? Billiam wants to know.
P.S. I really did not like him having to sit out of an immunity challenge. I thought that was no good. I did not like that.
When you say you didn't like that he had to sit out of a challenge, what do you mean?
The one where, not this week, but the previous one where he was like not on a team. Was it last week or the previous week where he was like did not get to be 2 weeks ago?
Oh, at the Mergatory.
Competing for immunity.
Yeah, but they've done that before.
I don't like it. I think if you should always be able to like compete for your own immunity.
But he got to pick which team he wanted to back,
and that was his like competition. I guess like the gamble. Yeah, I don't know.
I think
you should always be able to like have the option to compete for if there's an immunity challenge.
Okay. Let's see. Is there anything else that we haven't discussed? I think we got it all.
Fishy for right? Jam, I think, right? Like he's the one who was really pushing Kane. He's the one who's got this string, and I really do think like he's got to be thinking about his final tribal speech, like to be able to say like these 4 people voted for me, then 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, he's got it all down.
Yeah. So I think like he's Jam, like, because he's not just eliminating someone who voted for him, he's setting up his own narrative as a winner. And we always talk about how that's what you want to be able to do, is like tell a story about why you should win. And I think he's writing that story right now.
I think he's really, really good at it. I think that Carolyn has an uphill battle because she has to sort of like, and she's talked about this a lot in her confessionals about how, people think I'm this, but she still has to at some point change that perception around. And for Carson, I think that people really do like him and like have a lot of love for him, but he's been so weakened over these last couple of votes. Like I feel like it's going to be hard for people to that where people, I think that they feel like that he was our like sick baby bird that we had to bring along. Like I think it's hard to, especially if it is an all Tika final 3. I just think that Jam is so strong and so good at being able to articulate what he's done in the game and how he's played.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing and that's the quality of Carson that is working so well for him, right? Is that he seems so non-threatening that everyone like thinks he's their kid brother, like you said, like they're their baby bird to nurture. And that's why he has and he plays it so well, right? He plays it up so beautifully where he's able to create all these bonds and he's able to be in the middle of every conversation and nobody's threatened by him. And I think he's like playing that masterfully, but to your point, like at some point he has to be like, I'm the one leading things. And I agree that that's going to be a hard sell for him when everyone thinks of him as the sidekick.
Stephen, in the preview for next week's episode, Jamie said the era of alliances is over. Agree or disagree?
No. It's an inflammatory question. I disagree. I mean, clearly, I mean, like, this has been this game. My gosh, they're like really.
She didn't clarify if in season 44 the era of alliance is
Right.
over or in general.
I think, I mean, maybe it's like, a local comment with broader implications, right? Just sort of like specifically in this season, but more generally about. I mean, no. I mean, there's definitely alliances. Look at the Tika 3. That's an alliance.
I thought you declared the era of alliances was over when you said it was time for voting blocks.
That was a self-serving comment. That was not something that I meant as a prescriptive rule for the rest of Survivor. I'm big into alliances as opposed to voting blocks.
I did a whole deep dive last week about should people play the idol for their ally or for their alliance, like in the first part of the merge. And I did a whole deep dive into this, and I determined the only person who ever played their idol for their ally at prior to the final 6 that won the game was when Jeremy saved you.
Wow. I guess I'm the magic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So play your idols for me. That's the takeaway. It's like, don't play your idols for anybody else. Play your idols for me.
Well, I did a whole video about this on the YouTube channel that I do like a specific question every week. And I had spoken with Jeremy because we also, if people missed it, I also had the chance to do a tribute to Keith Nail. I spoke with Wentworth and Jeremy, Natalie Anderson, Savage, and Kimmy last week, and they had some great thoughts about their time with Keith out on Survivor. That's up on the podcast feed. But I asked Jeremy before I got off the phone with him about that, and Jeremy just had some interesting thoughts about how that for him it was that you were a person that he trusted having in the game. And then he basically had to ask himself, like, would I rather have Stephen in the game or would I rather have Sierra in the game? And in that instance, like, it made a lot more sense for him to want to keep you around. And he had 2 idols. But going back to Danny last week, that Brandon was Brandon loved Danny.
Yeah. Brandon was a potential in for Danny. It's true. Like, whereas Sierra was just like absolute chaos for everybody. In the best. I mean, great player. I loved playing with her.
They were sort of blinded by, it was like a Romeo and Juliet. They were blinded by Soka versus Ratu, but really that Brandon and Danny, like they fell in love. It was love at first sight, and they got blinded.
They needed to stick with what they had said, about like protecting each other, and because guys, like them don't win the game enough.
And Jeremy also felt like, okay, and you were also, you had the advantage, and you were a threat for people to worry about instead of being worried about him. Yeah. And so that turned out to be a good reason to play an idol for an ally.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the fact that they tried to vote me out instead of him is so dumb. No, truly, it's ridiculous. Like, they obviously should have been voting for him.
That's what Jeremy said to him one day. He said, "These guys are so dumb.
So dumb to vote for for me instead of Jeremy." Anyway, okay, that's not a source.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Okay, yeah. He said that was a bad idea also. But what are you gonna do? All right. Let's talk about what else we have coming up here. Of course. Hey, we are working so hard for the patrons of Rob Has a Podcast. This weekend, I'm going to get into another edition of the Survivor Academy. I'm going to talk with Beth Dixon this week about what future Survivor players can be learning up through this point in Survivor 44, not to mention access to international reality TV shows and all sorts of premium content that we put in our podcast feed, not to mention the greatest reality TV community in the world. That's all available at robasawebsite.com/patron. I'm sure you have about a jillion streaming services, and you are not getting nearly as much out of any of those as you would becoming a member of the Rob Has a Podcast patron community. I did take that one to the bank. Okay.
I believe that. Yeah.
This changed people's lives, Stephen.
Yeah.
Not an exaggeration.
No, true. Well, tell me some stories.
We got people that are married, lifelong friends, babies. How many people like, oh yeah, I met my husband on Hulu. I met my best friend on Peacock. Thank you, Discovery Plus.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah, no, I'm still paying for services I don't even watch. So yeah, that's no good.
Mm-hmm.
But I listen to Rob casts all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've got so many more Survivor podcasts coming your way. In addition to everything I'm doing, we've got everything in our Survivor podcast feed, the B&B, Survivor Global, Why Blank Lost, the Survivor Stock Watch, and the Purple Pants podcast, Survivor News Edition with Bryce Isaiah, all in our Survivor podcast feed. Make sure you subscribe. RHAP.com/subscribe. All right. And then, Stephen, have you checked out a little show called Jury Duty?
I have checked it out. I've watched up through episode 3. Episode 1, I was all the way in. I was dying.
Oh, you're a little out.
I'm a little out on episodes 2 and 3. I was a little bored. I felt like I was like kind of making myself laugh. Like the momentum of episode 1 was like, like still there.
Yeah. I talked about the first 4 episodes with Jenny Autumn on the Hit or Quit podcast, where we check out reality TV shows, and if it's a hit, we keep watching, and if it's not, we quit. We find something else. So we talked about episodes 1 through 4 by popular demand. Jury Duty on Hit or Quit.
Is it a hit or a quit?
It's a hit. We enjoyed it very much.
Good.
Yes. Okay. Let's check that out. And then earlier tonight, I talked about Below Deck Sailing Yacht with Sasha Joseph, and had a lot of fun covering that show for the very first time. Check that out in our Bravo catch-all feed. Then, this weekend, the aforementioned Zach Wartenberger will be, along with Survivor 43's Dwight, Omer, Grace, and Kirsten, and Mari, for a little Settlers of Catan live on Saturday afternoon. One of your favorites, Stephen.
Yeah, very fun.
Yes. Okay. Not the type of nerdy thing that Kane would do, but what Carson would do, right?
I don't know. I don't know where Settlers lies. That's a tweener, because Settlers is like a mainstream boardroom. It's for non-nerds to play. I mean, all nerds also play it, but I'm just saying, like, it's a crossover board game.
All right.
Everyone plays Settlers. It's a crossover.
Everybody plays it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Then, we've got coming up on about 13 minutes from now, Big Brother Canada's veto recap. Check out the Wednesday night edition of Big Brother Canada as it heads into a double eviction coming up on Thursday. And then over on the Crime Scene podcast, check out the coverage of American Manhunt, the Boston Marathon bombing, with Sarah Carradine and Mari Forth in our Crime Scene podcast feed. And of course, all these podcasts that you mentioned and more are available for free when you head on over to robhasawebsite.com/subscribe for our links on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thank you again for joining us for another week of Survivor Know It All. Stephen, anything coming up for you?
Yeah, I'll be on the Survivor Now podcast. If you want me to hear, tomorrow I'll be recording that. I think it's going to go live on. Oh no, we're going to go live tomorrow. We're going to go live tomorrow. It's live. Thursday at 1.
Do it live.
I think it's live. I don't know. I think it's live because go live. I don't know if it's like. Yeah, I think it's live.
Maybe it's Go Live.
Go the Survivor Now podcast. And then Saturday, for those in the Washington, D.C. area, I will be interviewing Johannes Lichtman, whose new novel, Calling Ukraine, was just released. It's an extremely funny novel about a young guy who goes to live in Ukraine. This is before the invasion. With and work in a call center there. It's great. It's got a lot of insights into Ukrainian culture and humor, and it's a fantastic book. And I'm going to be at the bookstore Politics and Prose in Washington, D.C. in conversation with Johannes Lichtman. So I will not be talking about Survivor. I'll be talking about his book. But if you'd like to hear me talk about a book,
what's the setup there? It's like you're going to be you sitting on chairs.
Yeah, there'll be chairs and there'll be people in the audience, and they'll be asking rambly questions that really statements about themselves. And then I'll be asking Johannes questions about his book. Yeah, it's a great book. It's a really funny book, but that's
awesome that you're doing this, but you're plugging it here. You're going to get questions like, I have a question. Stephen, do you think that Carolyn should have put a vote on?
Please don't. No. I would be so
It's like, what? Who's Carolyn?
Yeah.
Like, no, nothing.
Yeah, no, I
Nothing.
don't
Don't worry
won't
about
even
it.
acknowledge you. I'm that's not me. You're confusing me with somebody else.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a different Stephen.
Yes, Stephen, this question is about Kane. He said Ukraine? No, Kane.
Oh, no.
Kane.
No, not this audience, not the RHAP listeners. That's not their that's not their MO.
All right. Well, that's really cool that you're doing that.
Yeah, and I'm very honored because it's like I'm gonna I've always wondered like who are these authors, like when they say like in conversation with, and like who's the person who gets to be in conversation, and now I know it's me. I mean, the no qualifications is what qualifies them. The zero.
Yeah. All right. Well, have fun this weekend doing that. Thanks everybody for joining us. And we'll be back next week with more Survivor Know-It-Alls at the final 8 coming up next week. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.